Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. Azerbaijan says it has destroyed Armenia's ballistic missiles aimed at civilian population in Ganja and Mingashevir cities. Azeri head of Foreign Policy Affairs Hikmet Hajiev said the missiles were targeted in occupied Kalbajar region. Earlier, Ankara proposed a four-way dialogue between Turkey, Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia to solve the conflict over the Karabakh. Over 500 people have been killed in the ongoing conflict since the war started on 27th of September. Nine Afghan soldiers have been killed after two Mi-17 helicopters of the Afghan army collided in southern Helmand province. Afghan Ministry of Defense says technical issues caused the crash while taking off in the naval district of the province. The Taliban say a battalion of the Afghan army has surrendered during the ongoing fighting in southern Helmand province. Russia has rejected United States claims that both the countries have agreed to extend a key arms control pact. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Washington's claims are nothing but delusion and fraud. Ryabkov said the U.S. condition that Russia frees nuclear arsenals in order to extend New START is unacceptable. The number of coronavirus infections has topped 38 million worldwide, with over 1,080,000 deaths. The US, India and Brazil together account for more than half of the world's COVID-19 cases. India has reported 730 deaths and over 63,000 infections overnight, which has taken caseload to over 7.2 million. In Pakistan, 14 more people lost their lives to the virus overnight, taking the tally to 6,601. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. Azerbaijan says it has destroyed Armenia's ballistic missiles aimed at civilian population in Ganja and Mingashevir cities. Azeri head of Foreign Policy Affairs Hikmet Hajiev said the missiles were targeted in occupied Kalabahar region. In a tweet, Hajiev said Azerbaijan reiterates Turkey's important role in the peace process of the conflict. Earlier, Ankara proposed a four-way dialogue between Turkey, Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia to solve the conflict over Karabakh. In an interview, Turkey's presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalin said if the Minsk group hasn't been able to find a solution for more than 30 years, it's time to find a new mechanism. Over 500 people have been killed in the ongoing conflict since the war started on 27th of September. Now, 9 Afghan soldiers have been killed after two Mi-17 helicopters of the Afghanistan army collided in southern Helmand province. Afghan Ministry of Defense says technical issues during takeoff in the Nawar district of the province caused the crash. Meanwhile, the Taliban say a battalion of the Afghan army has surrendered during the ongoing fighting in southern Helmand province. Taliban spokesperson Qari Ahmadi claimed the surrender came during fighting in the Gurvesh district. The Afghan Ministry of Defense has not yet commented on Taliban's claims. Now, Russia has rejected U.S. claims that both the countries have agreed to extend a key arms control pact. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Washington's claims are nothing but delusion and fraud. Ryabkov said U.S. condition that Russia frees nuclear arsenals in order to extend the New START treaty is unacceptable. He said any attempt to use the talks as a campaign tool for upcoming U.S. presidential elections will be rebuffed. Earlier, U.S. Representative for Arms Control Marshal Billingsley said Washington and Moscow have reached an agreement in principle. Billingsley added the US was ready to extend the New START if both states agreed to a limitation or freeze of their nuclear arsenals. Billingsley said the freeze should include short-range tactical nuclear weapon systems. Now, the US has urged Turkey to end the calculated provocation by pulling back its exploratory ship from waters contested with Greece. State Department said coercion and military activities will not resolve tensions in the eastern Mediterranean. Spokesperson Morgan Ortakus also called upon Ankara to immediately begin exploratory talks with Athens. Earlier, Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas criticized Turkey for redeploying the vessels. In a press conference with his Cypriot counterpart Nikos Christodoulides, Maas said it is up to Turkey to create the conditions for talks. Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu criticized the US for not recognizing the rights of the Turkish Cypriots. Cavusoglu said any partisan statement or action by external forces will only complicate the matter. Meanwhile, Lebanon has signed an agreement with Germany to rebuild the Beirut naval base, which was destroyed in the port's explosion. The Lebanese army said the deal was signed by German Ambassador Andreas Kindl and Military Commander General Joseph Aoun. Commander Aoun expressed his appreciation for the German government's initiative. He said German soldiers working within the UN interim forces in Lebanon are consolidating the relations between the two armies. Meanwhile, Kindl said Germany stands with Lebanese army and intends to develop cooperation in the future in multiple fields. Now, Germany's initiative came after two explosions rocked Beirut's port on August 4, killing around 190 people. Now, in Kyrgyzstan, President Sooronbay Jeenbekov has rejected the newly appointed prime minister in the latest political deadlock. Sooronbay Jeenbekov asked parliament to vote again after MPs chose nationalist politician Sadir Japarov last week. The president said there were doubts over whether lawmakers had followed voting rules. His announcement came shortly after a senior aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the former Soviet state. He met both President Jeenbekov and Japarov. Kyrgyzstan has been gripped by a political crisis since disputed parliamentary polls in October. Now, Pakistan has been re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council with an overwhelming majority. The country secured 169 votes in the 193-member UN General Assembly. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the re-election reflects the international community's trust in Pakistan's commitment to upholding human rights. This is the fifth time Pakistan has been elected to the premier UN body on human rights. With re-election, Pakistan will continue as a member for another 3 years term, commencing on 1st of January 2021. Russia, Cuba, China have also been elected to the council. Now, in Pakistan, 14 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, with the death toll rising to 6,601. The Health Ministry says 615 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said there are 8,782 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of over 320,000 infections, some 305,000 have recovered. The ministry said more than 140,000 cases have been detected in the and 80,000 deaths. The US, India and Brazil together account for more than half of the world's COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, India's death toll has surged to over 110,000, with more than 7.2 million infections. More details in this report.
The surging second wave of COVID-19 has jeopardized hopes of an early economic revival, especially for developing countries. Brazil continues to be the worst-hit country in Latin America, while Argentina is also witnessing a steep rise in infections. Struggling to contain the outbreak and sustain its economy, Mexico has announced to vaccinate 116 million of its population by the end of 2021.
With what I just mentioned, if we add COVAX and each one of these, AstraZeneca, Pfizer and CanSino, we will be covering more than 100 million Mexicans. As of today, Mexico is in the same condition as the United States and the European Union and other countries in the world. We've already assured the necessary capacity.
Many countries across Europe have widened scope of restrictions to regain a grip on the resurging pandemic. The Czech Republic has extended school shutdown till November 3rd and restricted all eateries to home deliveries only. The Netherlands has also enforced a partial lockdown, while hospitals in Paris are once again being overwhelmed. Spain's healthcare system is on the ropes as well, as Catalan's medics demand more resources amid rising infections.
We are asking for help because we cannot give people the resources they need to be treated during this COVID pandemic. I mean, we are not treating people as we should in the current circumstances we are facing in this pandemic.
After confirmed instances of recovered patients contracting COVID-19 again, the World Health Organization has dismissed the idea of herd immunity to fight the virus, saying it will only cause suffering and death.
Now, the Executive Board of World Bank has approved a $12 billion in funding for COVID-19-stricken developing countries. The new funding aims to finance, purchase and distribute COVID-19 vaccines. In a statement, the bank said the program will include technical support for deploying vaccines at scale. It said the financing plan is part of the $160 billion that the World Bank pledged to provide to developing countries. The statement said the funding will signal drug companies that there will be ample financing for COVID-19 vaccines in these countries. Now, the US will deploy up to 2,500 soldiers in Bulgaria as part of the 10-year defense cooperation roadmap. The agreement was reached during a meeting between Bulgarian Defense Minister Krasimir and his US counterpart Mark Esper in Washington. Karakanashov said the two NATO countries aim at deepening cooperation in the Black Sea region. The American soldiers will be deployed at 4 military bases used by the US in Bulgaria. The Balkan nation has also purchased 8 F-16 Block 70 aircraft from the US, which will be delivered in 2024. The biggest World War II bomb ever found in Poland has exploded underwater as Navy divers try to defuse it. More than 750 people were evacuated from the area where the Talboy bomb was found. Local authorities said no one was injured and no infrastructure damaged. The bomb weighed nearly 5,400 kilograms and included 2,400 kilograms of explosives. The bomb was dropped by the British Air Force in 1945 in an attack on the German cruiser Lützow. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, in Thailand, hundreds of protesters clashed with police after 21 people were arrested ahead of a new round of anti-government demonstrations. The demonstrators are calling for a new constitution and the removal of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The protesters threw blue paint at officers and demanded the release of detainees. Breaking a taboo against criticizing the royal family, they shouted at the motorcade of King Maha Vajiralongkorn. They have also called for curbs on the powers of the monarchy. Royalist politician Varung Dishkita Vikram condemned the protesters in a Facebook post. Russia has rejected accusations that it launched a cyber attack against the Norwegian parliament in August. In a statement, the Russian embassy in Oslo said the allegations are a deliberate provocation and harm bilateral ties. It said Norway has not presented any evidence of its accusations. Earlier, Norwegian Foreign Minister Ein Eriksson said Russia was behind the cyber attack. In August, Norway said hackers attacked the parliament's email system, gaining access to some lawmakers' messages. Now, Twitter has suspended several fake accounts claiming to be African Americans who support US President Donald Trump. The social media giant said the accounts broke its rules on spam and platform manipulation. It said it may suspend additional accounts if they were found to be violating its policies. Twitter said most accounts impersonated real Americans in their profiles, with some of them having tens of thousands of followers. Social media platforms have ramped up checks ahead of the November presidential election in the US. Now, the skeleton of a carnivorous dinosaur has been sold at a Paris auction house for €3 million. More about this 150 million-year-old dinosaur in this report.
The skeleton of Allosaurus dinosaur, discovered in a lying position with 2/3 of the bones intact, was dug up in the U.S. state of Wyoming 3 years ago. Measuring 3.5 meters high and 10 meters long, it is one of the largest skeletons of the species in the world. The near-complete skeleton was auctioned in Paris with the starting price of 1 million to 1.2 million euros.
This year, we are lucky to present a beautiful specimen found between the end of 2016 and the start of 2017. It is complete at almost 70%, which is rare. It is connected with fragments coming from the same animal and very well restored by the biggest European restoration expert in this field, and we estimate it at 1 million euros.
It went to an unnamed foreign buyer for 3 million euros. Allosaurus possessed a massive skull, a short neck, and a large rib cage. The skeleton had traces of trauma on 3 sides, which experts say are probably due to battles with other species or prey. Paleontology expert Iacono Briano described the skeleton as a high-grade specimen.
For this specimen, its size, quality of the bones, completeness of the skeleton, and specimen found in anatomical connection. It has been found in the lying position. All the vertebrae were in their place, all connected. These are the 4 main features that makes me say, okay, this is a high-range specimen.
The specimen is unusual because it is so complete with around 70% of the bones being present. The skeleton was found aligned with each other, making it easier to reconnect the bones during the restoration process.
Now, the IMF says a resurgence of COVID-19 cases and low prospects for a vaccine will have a severe impact on world economy. In a briefing, IMF chief economist Geeta Gopinath said over 90 million people are likely to fall into extreme poverty this year. The International Monetary Fund warned of a growing recovery gap between rich and poor. Gopinath said growing restrictions on trade and investment also pose risks to the economic forecast for 2021. She said the pandemic is not over and there could be even worse outcomes. Gopinath said some $12 trillion in fiscal support from the governments had helped the limit damage.
Now, except for China, where output is expected to exceed 2019 levels this year, output in both advanced economies and emerging and developing economies are projected to stay below 2019 levels well into 2021.
Well, the IMF predicted the US will see a 4.3% contraction in its 2020 GDP, considerably less than the 8% forecast. Now, most stocks in Asia-Pacific have edged lower as investors reacted to a speech from Chinese President Xi Jinping. Mainland Chinese stocks have edged down. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong slipped fractionally. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 bucked the overall trend among the region's major markets as it rose slightly. But the Japanese Topix Index shed marginally. South Korea's Kospi declined close to 1%. Meanwhile, Australia's ASX 200 also slipped under the flat line. And now it's time for the weather updates. And well, that is all for now. For the latest update, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.